Okay, so we've put in a container, a header, and a nav for navigation. And I'm also going to we've got a content in here. We've ended the content at the bottom. So right after nav, I put in div ID equals content. And at the bottom, before the last ended div, I ended another one and ended of my content. So I'm going to go into my styles and I'm going to say pound content, squiggly brackets, and inside the squiggly brackets I'm going to say background dash color colon orange semicolon save. I'm going to go find my file and I'm going to refresh, and we've got a nice orange content. Okie dokie. Now when you're looking at this, you've got a container, a header, a nav, and a content. And when you're looking at this screen, things are kind of there, but not where we want them, because we want it to kind of look like that in the end. So let's look at our nav. I want our nav to float on the screen, but I also need to give it a width so that when it does float, it's smaller than everything else. So let's try a width, colon, of 250 px, semicolon, save, refresh. Yeah, that makes it smaller. And maybe give it above that, I'm going to say I want it to float, colon, and I want it to float to the left. I don't want it to float to the right and go wandering off. So I'm going to put a semicolon at the end of float left, refresh, and things bounce up around it because it's kind of floating a little higher than they are and they can slide under. And, oh, let's make it have a height too. Height, colon, 500 pixels for lack of a better, and then semicolon. That's not too bad. Well, if our nav is 500 pixels tall, why don't we make the height of our content 500 pixels tall so they sort of match. So content, inside content, we'll put height 500 px, semicolon, and now at the bottom they kind of match. That's nice. That's not too bad. So let's see, what else have we got? We've got right up against the edge on the content, all the words are right up against that edge, so I'm going to go into content and I'm going to say I want the inside of my box to have a little bit of padding. I don't want to put any padding around the outside, which is your margin, but I want the inside to have some padding like you would with a cardboard box. You've got a margin around it so you're not too close to something that's flammable that would burn it up, and on the inside you put some packing material to give it padding, dash left, colon, let's say 15 px, semicolon. And we'll save and refresh it. I know that's not going to work because we're saying you have 15 pixel padding from the edge over on the left, and it's sort of floating behind the nav bar, so the navigation head ID. So let's tell it it's got a margin. The content has this space on the left-hand side that's as wide as the navigation is. So let's tell it margin, dash left, colon, 250 pixels, because that's what our navigation was, semicolon, and refresh, and now it laughs at me. Why are you not playing nice? So, sometimes it doesn't play nice, and that's just the way life is. So let's try 20 pixels. Sometimes you have to do something ludicrous to get it to work. Refresh. 250 pixels. Oh, PX helps instead of just X. Notice that if you don't put in the right letters or the right stuff, it won't work. There we go. And there's our 20 pixel padding and our margin. You know, there's this white stuff all the way around. That's always helpful. Let's go to the very top of our style and put in body. Just body, no, not bossy. Body. Squirrely brackets. And we're going to set the margin to 0 pixels. Semicolon. And what happens is the body is a tag that you can just do without setting an ID, so it doesn't need that little refresher. And that moves it over. That's good. We'll tell the body we don't want any padding on it. So padding, colon, 0px, semicolon, px, not s, semicolon, refresh. And we'll do the same thing to our container. And our header, we'll also do a margin. I'm going to paste the margin in there and take the padding out. So I'm being lazy and doing copy paste. All right. My white didn't disappear at the top, but this is real cooking, so it's okay. In our header, let's make the height of the header. Height, colon, let's make it 70 pixels, semicolon. That should make it bigger. Yep. And we're going to tell it that we want padding this time on our header. We want padding on the inside, but we don't want it all over. We just want padding, dash left. Let's see, I want to indent it about, I don't know, 200, colon, 200 px, semicolon. Save, refresh, and it pops over. I'd like to bump those words down too, so I'm going to do padding dash top, colon, oh, 10 pixels, semicolon. It should bump it down. Oh, did you see that? Did you see that? It got rid of the white. The reason it was doing that was because the H1 that goes around our document object model has a padding and a margin of its own. So we have to be careful of those too. All right. We've got something going on here. So I'm going to say, just in case we've got an H1 or an H2, it's got some funky padding going on. Margin, colon, 0 pixels, semicolon, not dash set pixels, 0 pixels. And that brings it back up. So sometimes you have to watch what the tags around it have. Now in my picture over here, I've got some padding on my what is a document object model, and I'm going to actually set that padding in the content. I'm going to tell the content I want it to have a top padding. So padding dash top colon 10 pixels semicolon. That's better. That looks good. Oh, now my nav div is off by a little bit. Well, you know, you get playing with this stuff over and over again. If I put height of 10 pixels, I bet that'll compensate for the padding I just put in. You'll see the bottom changes back. And we also need borders. So I'm going to come back in a minute and do borders, because my file's probably 2 gigs.